Last week I flew out to San Francisco to play Immortals of Aveum early, and today I get to share my impressions with you guys. Before we start, this is not B-roll. They let us capture, so you're watching me play the game. In terms of performance, this played about as well as other games I've been able to play early. There was some frame rate issues, but nothing that I don't think can be ironed out before launch. Before we jump in, thank you to EA for sponsoring this video. So what is Immortals of Aveum? After playing this game for around 2 hours, it's a first-person shooter where you use magic instead of a gun. It's not open world, so you're moving through these super detailed levels with a set objective for the most part. They told us there are some more open areas in between missions where you can slow down, get some lore, do some crafting, and sell to vendors, but yeah, don't go in thinking this is an open world game because it's just not. You play as Jack, who is something called a Magnus, which means he has control over all 3 types of magic in this world. It's blue, red, and green. You belong to the kingdom called Lucium, and you're fighting back against Rasharn, which is this enemy faction who wants to control the entire world. There's this war that's been going on forever, and you're part of the Immortals, which is this elite group of battle mages, and you're basically the last hope of defeating Sandrak, who is the big bad guy. From the time I played, the story is front and center, and there's a decent number of lengthy cutscenes. But luckily, they're really impressive since this game runs on Unreal Engine 5.1. The motion capture and the quality of visuals is up there with the prettiest games we've ever seen, and this was a main drawing point for me. Like, yes, I want to check out this game because it's running on the latest tech. That also translates to gameplay. In the time I played, there are so many set pieces, just massive explosions and sci-fi battles going on in the background. There's constantly something going on that catches your eye. In combat, there's tons of particle effects and bursting flashes of magic, and to be honest, this is something that concerned me. It looked a little overwhelming before I played, and when I did play, sometimes it did feel overwhelming. I found it easy to lose track of enemies during some of the larger battles. That being said, it didn't detract from how Immortals feels to play, which, to be honest, is great. I mean, the best comparison I can make, oddly enough, is to the new Doom games, 2016 and Eternal. I mean, this is a constant juggling act. You're dodging enemy attacks and firing back some of your own. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach to how you play this. You can't just use the same magic. You have to cycle through and find out what works. Red magic is chaos, blue magic is focus, and green magic is life. But all you really need to know is to match the color of the magic to the enemy that you're hitting. So if they're glowing red and coming at you, you need to hit them with red magic. Hit blue guys with blue magic and green guys with green magic. When I first heard this, I was like, okay, this might feel a little bit dull and simple, but the sheer variety and number of enemies that they throw at you makes things very complicated very quickly. Luckily, you're able to move around pretty freely. You know, Jack can sprint, dodge in any direction, and later on he can even hover in place, so that's how you can avoid some of the melee enemies. You can also pull up a magical shield, and this thing just stays up while you're still firing magic through that shield. And honestly, this was the only way I survived some of the fights, so you actually have to use it. There's also a ton of different spells to play around with. First, you have your sigil strikes. This is the basic thing that comes out of the magic gauntlet that Jack is wearing. In the gear menu, you can choose different variations of these spells, but the way that they work usually depends on what type of magic you're using. Red magic is that high damage burst. It feels like a shotgun at short range. Blue magic is like a semi-automatic rifle, and this works best at medium to long range. And then green magic is homing and usually fires quickly like a submachine gun. I started with some fairly generic versions of these spells, but later on when I found some better gear, my red magic turned into these mini explosions. My blue magic turned into this high-risk, high-reward sniper rifle, and then my green magic turned into more powerful homing missiles. And it made me realize there's probably going to be a lot of variety in how this stuff works in the final game. So that's just your primary fire. Next is your secondary, which are called control spells. There's a blue one called Lash, which pulls enemies towards you, and that's of course great for taking out archers or snipers. Next is limpets, which are these green blobs that slow down faster enemies. And then red is Disrupt, which stuns enemies. In the demo, I used limpets the most. It felt nice to slow down bad guys and make it a lot easier to finish them off. There's at least 2 control spells per color, at least that I could see, so I'm interested to see what else will be in the game, later on. The next group of spells is called Fury, and these are big, powerful attacks that cost mana to cast, which is to say everything else that I've talked about before now just kind of has its own cooldown, or it just needs to be reloaded, but mana is like an actual resource you have to pay attention to. Blue is called Shatter. This is like a short-range AoE that goes out from Jack, and I use this a ton when I played. Like, it was very useful. Green is Torrent, which I got towards the end. This fires like a volley of green magic, and yeah, it works great against long-range enemies with green armor. And then red is Blast Wave. This is a 360-degree blast that knocks enemies away from you. So if you're being overwhelmed, you just pull this out and it works like a charm. Seeing as there's slots for more of these were on my numbers on mouse and keyboard, I'd expect at least one more of each spell type in the final game. And then at last, you've got, of course, an ultimate ability, which was described to us as like a map clear move. This is the most powerful thing you can do, and it slowly fills up over time. The one I used in the demo was basically a Kamehameha from Dragon Ball Z. I mean, you just pull it out, it's a magical beam, and it melts anything that gets in its path. So, as you can see, there's a lot of complexity in this game's combat, and like I mentioned with the graphics, it can feel a lot. I mean, at worst, it felt overwhelming, and I was just scrambling around to stay alive. But towards the end of my time, about like an hour and a half in, the game felt like things finally came together. I mean, I was dodging attacks, throwing up my shield, cycling to the best spell for the task, and blasting away bad guys. And again, that's why it really reminded me of Doom. It sort of strikes this frenetic balance between, oh my gosh, this feels amazing, I can't believe I pulled that off, to, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I'm about to die. And this feeling really shines through with how the game uses bosses. Now, at the end of each of the levels, and sometimes in the middle, I got to fight a big bad guy, and depending on your skill level, these fights can be hard. The tutorial boss was called Oathbroken, and it really forces you to move around. This guy just charges at you, so of course I defaulted to my red magic at short range, but yeah, I was just shocked at how aggressive this guy is, but I still beat him on the first try. Like, it wasn't too difficult. The second boss, however, it's this massive dragon called a Howler, and I don't think I've ever sweat this much at a preview event than I did fighting this guy. I mean, these attacks are predictably very strong. I think I died like 5 to 10 times trying to take this thing down, and I'm only playing on normal, so it's, it was tough. At first I tried to get close to this guy and use red magic because that's what he was firing back at me, but I learned quickly you just can't get close to him at all. He does this pound attack and it just wipes out your health. And so this boss really showed me that you have to pay attention to how you're playing. You can't, it's not just face roll, to defeat anything. You have to switch things up, and I learned that you have to hit the Howler from long range and carefully dodge those attacks in order to survive, again, on normal. Next, I came upon the green Magnus, and this was your typical summoner fight, just tons of ads coming at me throughout, so I had to keep moving and keep taking out those enemies or else I would die. And I said there's no one-size-fits-all, but really, similar to Doom, you have to keep moving. If you stand still in this game, you're just gonna die, and that's something that I learned the hard way. But funny enough, the boss at the end of the demo felt easy by comparison, but that's probably because of how tough that Howler fight was. I had already cut my teeth and gotten better at the game because of how that boss challenged me, and you know what? That felt really good. Other things I haven't mentioned yet. There's a skill tree, so you'll get ascensions, which are basically skill points. Then you can dive in and spec into whichever spells you like the most. There's also some gear crafting and upgrading, so if you like a certain sigil strike or a totem for control spells, you can keep upgrading it and using it as long as you want. Personally, I think it's a bit tired to have skill trees and gear slots in a video game. I mean, we've played so many that use that same system, but it does seem that this isn't trying to be like a looter shooter where you're constantly getting new pieces with slightly better stats. So I'm hoping to use this as little as possible in the full game. That's just a personal opinion. There's also some light puzzling and platforming. So you'll come across these areas, these gaps where you can't move across, or there's a, something blocking an objective where you need to go. So you're able to use your green magic to move these objects in the world in order to, get to the next area. And then there's some optional doors along the main path where you have to use the right kind of magic on these colored stones in order to open it, and you'll find a chest full of gold. Like, this is very self-explanatory stuff, very light puzzling, but I kind of prefer that, so the action doesn't lose momentum. That seems, the direction that they went in. Overall, Immortals of Aveum feels like a hyper-focused FPS single-player game with high-quality graphics and engaging gameplay. And personally, I don't think the story will be a primary reason that I get into this game, but there's certainly plenty of it to enjoy there. Like, there's some lore stuff you can pick up, you can read into, and learn more about the world of Aveum. But again, I'm looking for the combat to continue to deliver that pulse-pounding gameplay loop of dodging enemy attacks and firing off spells of my own. There's a chaotic sort of dance to this action that I'm very much into and I'm excited to play more of. After my 2 hours of playing, the only questions I really had left are how long is this game going to be? Because, it is a single player game. It's very sort of high quality, high budget. Is there going to be enough of this game to keep my attention? And is that action going to continue to evolve for the entire runtime? I think it's easy for these high, action, hot, fast-paced games to sort of burn bright at the beginning and then sort of slow down. There's no reason that Immortals will do that, but it's something that, at least I'm thinking about. And then I'm also looking for the story to grab me a little more. Maybe I just didn't play enough of it to really soak it in and get attached to these characters yet, but I really hope that, some stuff happens that really gets me hooked. That is everything that I have to share about Immortals of Aveum. If you watch this and you want to check out the game for yourselves, Immortals of Aveum is releasing July 20th on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, PC via the EA app, Steam, and the Epic Games Store. You can go ahead and click the link in the description to pre-order the game now. And once again, thank you to EA for sponsoring this video. If you enjoyed the video, remember to hit that like button. Also subscribe if you haven't already for more videos just like this, and hit the bell so you don't miss my next one. Thank you guys again for watching, and I will talk to you next time.